Susan Nissan is the principal of Fusion Charter, an innovative secondary school program in Turlock, California. Susan's expertise in working with the alternative programs includes 23 years of experience in the charter school community in Stanislaus County, with 4 years as principal of 2015 California Gold Ribbon School winner, Valley Charter High, an early college program. Since joining Fusion as principal in 2016, Susan has emphasized team leadership and local community engagement. She believes in maximizing opportunities for students and established Fusion as a Summit Learning School in 2017. Susan is the current secretary and a member since 2013 of the board of directors of the Great Valley Academy in Modesto. She has 14 years of experience as a volunteer team visit to schools seeking or renewing accreditation with the Accrediting Commission for Schools Western Association of Colleges and Schools. Susan holds a Master of Science degree in Developmental Psychology from Cornell University, a multiple subjects teaching credential from CSU Stanislaus, and an administrative credential from the Teachers College of San Joaquin. Susan has been a resident of Turlock since 1992, and she and her husband, Belus Nissan, have been married for 39 years and are the parents of 4 adult children who are fluent in the Assyrian language. Welcome to the Modern Assyrian on ANB SAD. My name is Carmen Morad. My special guest today is Susan Nissan, a very special person who's an educator in our area here in Turlock and Stanislaus County. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here, Carmen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're an educator, you're a principal, you have many roles in our education system here in Stanislaus County, and you, like many of us, are working out of home. So thanks for making time for us today.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I'm at home part of the time, and then I do go into school. We take shifts, but letters have to be sent and invoices have to be signed. So I'm back and forth, and thankful to have that freedom to be able to work at home part of the time.
Susan, it is so important for us to hear from persons with your position and your expertise and educational background in innovative schooling in the charter school system. Can you please tell us a little bit about your years and years of experience in what you do in education, and also tell us what is innovative school programs?
Okay. Well, I've been very fortunate for many years to be a part of the charter school world in Stanislaus County. We have quite a number of very well-established charter schools in Stanislaus County. Several of the charters in our county were in the original 100 schools that were started back in the mid-90s. The beginning of the charter school movement. And I really feel very comfortable in a smaller community. I really have felt that I've been able to have opportunities with my own family and with my own career that have been such a blessing. I've been a principal now for 8 years, and prior to that, for 15 years, I was in Keys Charter School, which works with homeschool families. So that was really excellent preparation for the school shutdowns and the homeschooling that we have going on now. And then after those 15 years, I moved into 4 years in an early college setting at Valley Charter High School in Modesto. And at that time, I also began to be a board member at the Great Valley Academy, which is a wonderful school system for grades K through 8, which includes both 2 on-site school properties as well as a homeschool program. So again, many different connections. And then for the last 4 years, I've been here in Turlock working with Fusion Charter School. And Fusion is a unique school that particularly addresses the social and emotional needs of students who have, many of whom have been traumatized in their home life. We have a number of foster youth that we serve, and students for whom things are very challenging in a traditional school setting. So we've been able to provide a small, flexible school setting for them, which again is very informative for the current flexible setting that we all find ourselves in. And even with the experience that I've had in alternative schools, I can tell you that no one was prepared for this. Never in our programs as educators, as teachers, as administrators, did we have a preparation for what would happen if no one could actually go to a school building. Because even in our programs for students who were homeschoolers or independent study, there's a tremendous amount of interaction and, going to workshops and field trips and park days and school sites. And staying at home under a quarantine is something that none of us in our lifetimes have experienced, nor did we prepare for that. We prepared for many other kinds of disasters, and many people are aware that educators are responsible for students under their care in the case of a natural disaster. Part of our training is that, we might be with our students for days on end until their parents would be able to reach them. But to have the complete opposite happen where, students are with their families and, unable to interact in person with educators is something that none of us ever imagined would happen to us. So I do want to just give a tremendous shout out. Today is the last day of Teacher Appreciation Week, and I appreciate all the teachers, not only in Stanislaus County, but in California, in our nation, and throughout the world, who are doing things that they never prepared for, are trying to meet the needs of their own families, protect their own health, at the same time that they are providing care and education in an entirely new way for their students. So it is no amount of experience could have prepared anyone for this. And I just appreciate all the many educators who are doing a wonderful job learning as they go and caring for their students.
Susan, you're absolutely right. There is no more a noble of a position than a teacher, than an educator. You in our community are known as a champion for homeschooling, for charter schools. And as you just mentioned, no one was prepared for the pandemic and the social distancing, and how every parent now is playing a more stronger role in their kids' education. I would like to talk to you, Susan, about the socio-emotional impact. Not only, you're the perfect person to ask this question of having a master's of science degree in developmental psychology and having the position that you have as an administrator, as a principal, as a director, and other roles that you have had. What is the one thing that you want parents to know, those who are home with their kids? Perhaps they don't have the multiple credentials that other educators have. And given the level of stress, given the level of uncertainty, than just the academic aspect of it, what is it that you want parents to know that are watching this program about the fact that most likely the rest of the school year is out, the kids are home, and there's more than just the academic aspect of it. There is the emotional, the socio-emotional, the social distancing, but not social disconnecting. How does that play into the psyche of how students are supposed to be, connecting with their schoolmates and their school environment?
That's a wonderful question. In fact, it's really the focus that I wanted to talk about this evening, because taking exams and following a particular curriculum that was laid out for a school setting is not the emphasis right now. The emphasis is on getting through this together and learning from this experience. Children of different ages approach an unknown and traumatic situation differently. Obviously we have very young children who are, very happy to be home with their parents, and are very many of them do miss their friends. They miss, especially in households where there might only be one child, or children who are, not close in age. They may feel like they're missing their playmates, and so we have we have all the way from the spectrum of the very young children, the preschool children and the kindergarten children who are at home, to the high school seniors who are so disappointed that they're missing out on, the big events that they had planned to take part in, and the college students. Some of our parents are college students at the same time that they're now at home with their children. So we have everything in between, and it is incredibly important for us to validate how those feel. Again, they weren't expecting this. Parents weren't expecting this. It is a highly stressful time, but it's also a time that can be very rich in opportunities to just pause and spend time together. It's a beautiful spring. Many of the things that children learn, they learn by experiencing hands-on. We can set aside, to some extent, it's been very difficult for teachers to come up with some kind of remote assignment that would be implemented by a parent in the home in the same way that a teacher would implement it in a school setting, particularly because many of the activities that are done in school are focused on a group rather than an individual child, or a small family of children. So I want parents to realize that it's okay to focus on family and to focus on activities that are enjoyable to the family, but are also learning. I know that for years we've heard about, well, you can learn through cooking, you can learn through gardening. Well, yes, you can. And when we were in our for many years in our homeschool programs, we focused on learning academics through some of these different methods. And now the students that I worked with at Keys Charter, now some of them are in their 30s and in their 20s, and they were able to move on from a very hands-on project-based learning to do quite well in college and in adult careers. So I don't want parents to feel that they're going to have to try to keep up with something so that their students won't be behind. And our students are all in the same situation right now. No one is taking standardized state tests in the spring. There are no numbers that are going to be associated with how much a student mastered during this school year. What's going to be important as we move into the future is, how resilient and how strong is that child? How loved did that child feel by the phone calls that were received from the teacher, by the lunch programs? Our local community schools have immediately, their first focus was on making sure that all students had something to eat, and that was an absolutely correct focus, to take care of the students physically first. We've seen school lunches and breakfasts provided throughout the community with a minimum of paperwork, and provided freely to everyone. Any child was provided for. Many in our community are providing to any family in need. And so we want to make sure that students, first of all, children, feel that they're cared for in all of this. And we don't want them to have the feeling of, oh, I didn't finish that worksheet that I was supposed to finish today the way that the teacher, would have wanted me to finish it if I were in the school setting. And that isn't to say that that we should set aside the lesson plans that teachers have prepared, but do as much as you can and that will bring joy to your family, and celebrate the small steps, just like we do when a child is first learning to walk or first learning to speak. This is something that we're all learning how to do. The teacher is learning how to interact with the student in a remote setting. The parent is learning how to support this, and many parents are either essential workers who are having to go out to work themselves, and so
Mhm.
older siblings and grandparents are stepping in, or perhaps the parent is trying to work from home, and some of the parents are teachers themselves. So there are many different factors that are here. A typical classroom is a very unusual setup where children all of a similar age are all together, for a number of hours. And, here we have a family setting where children are with people in their family of various ages, and are not necessarily with children of their own age, uh, other than through a video chat, or maybe waving to them across the street when they're outside playing. And I certainly hope in this beautiful weather that families are spending time outside, even if it's some simple gardening or yard work or bike riding or drawing with chalk, writing messages with chalk on sidewalks. So children have a lot of opportunities now to do activities with their family that don't look like what they were doing in school, but still achieve some of the same ends of learning not only academic uh, concepts, but also learning how to care for one another.
Susan, you mentioned earlier that the demographic you're working with now has to do with traumatized children and kids that have had a really tough start in
Yes.
life. Everything that you just mentioned is the ideal setting of a family.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, not every child is blessed to have that ideal
That's right.
makeup of a family. So, in that scenario where the kids are forced to stay home in an environment that is not the friendliest or not the most loving, how are the schools or the school districts administrators keeping in tap on the well being of those children, not just their education, but their well being as well? What is the system that actually happens?
Mhm. Well, I know from interacting with educators in webinars throughout the last 7 weeks, that schools are reaching out in every way they can, all the way from phone calls, home visits, sometimes with appropriate social distancing, dropping things off. We have, for example, a family that cannot make it to the children don't have transportation to get to any of the meal distribution sites. So our
Mhm.
campus supervisor every day takes the meals from the larger district to the family. One of the children in the family is enrolled in our school, but the other children are enrolled in other schools throughout the local district. And so we're working together with them. And I know that there are relationships like that going on all throughout our state, where community organizations are working with schools to check in, not only to make sure that the children have something to eat, but to make sure that their mental health is protected. We have a wonderful counselor at our school who makes calls to students if a teacher has any concern that a student might be depressed, or in some way might be unsafe, or might lack resources. Um, there are, not only do we have counselors in our schools to connect with, but teachers are well supplied with warm lines and hotlines, numbers that they can call, or that they can give to students to call. Our local school districts on their websites have placed those numbers. So if in the community you have a concern about, a child in your neighborhood, um, those are resources that you can go to as well. And this is definitely a time to look out for each other, and go over and knock on the door of that child that you haven't seen out for a while, because you're absolutely correct, Carmen, that most of our listeners are going to be in families where the children are receiving attention and receiving care, but they might have neighbors or friends that they're concerned about. They haven't heard from them. And on our way, out for an essential shopping trip, there's absolutely no reason not to knock on the door. I've done that myself a number of times, not only with students, but also with children in the family, children in the neighborhood. And it's very rewarding for me to leave a book or to leave a small surprise for them, and go back and get in my car and wave to them as they pick it up. And those are things that help adults as well to feel that we have some sense of control over this, situation that we find ourselves in. We all have clothing that we can donate, and I can tell you that the local community agencies are still accepting clothing. They're accepting games that are sitting in your closet that haven't been, touched by children for years, and books, and people are very happy to get those, to have something that not only is entertaining and educational, but also shows that people are thinking about them. We hear about seniors who are being adopted by people in the community who don't even know them, who drop by with a basket of things just to say, hey, I'm so proud of you. You're graduating from high school. Maybe there is, maybe some of the events that they had anticipated aren't happening, but these other events can happen. So there are ways where every citizen in our community can reach out to children who are having a tough go of it. And, many of the parents that are struggling to make ends meet are taking jobs doing delivery and things like food service related, saying hi, saying thank you. You can leave a tip in an envelope on the door when they come to deliver a meal to you. And those types of small gestures can really help all of us, and they mean a lot to the children in the family as well, because when the adults in the family are able to care for their children, are able to provide for their children, then obviously that benefits the entire family in more ways than just the physical way. It also lifts their spirits and lets them know that we truly are all in this together.
Yes, it can be that silver lining that we often talk about out of every situation that we have no control of. And, committing random acts of kindness, as you said, when children see their care providers, parents, or their older siblings or relatives do these acts of kindness, it does make you not only feel better yourself, but you're also providing. It could be that kindness that the recipient of that gesture could be the only one that they have received. So thank you for bringing that up. That really makes a big difference, because we really have to remind ourselves of our humanity. We have to remind ourselves of the kindness that we can provide to one another. And Susan, you mentioned something about watching out for our mental health. There is such stigma when it comes to mental health in the community at large, especially the Assyrian community.
Oh,
We
yes.
don't talk about when we are depressed or we are anxious, but we do see with all the reporting that goes on with our community service agencies and our law enforcement that domestic violence is up. Substance abuse and alcohol related crimes are up. And we see that those who had anxiety to begin with or depression, with the uncertainty that goes on, watching the news all the time, and unfortunately that can create some undue stress. And my question to you, Susan, my last question to you, as someone who, is an educator, is someone who works with the unserved children in our community who have had trauma. How do you explain what is going on to a child, to someone who has PTSD, to someone has experienced trauma? Because we've talked about not watching the news too much.
Right.
We have to know enough to prevent us and our loved ones from catching, for taking preventative measures, but on a psychological and social and, at this time, personal, social, professional manner, how do we have this conversation with our kids about what's going on, Susan?
Yeah. Well, one thing that it's really important to remember is when a child is stressed and traumatized, that they are going to behave um, in a way that is perhaps younger than the way that they would behave in an optimal situation. And as I said earlier, we need to acknowledge that, and we need to be aware that that child is doing the best that he or she can to protect the emotions that they have, and to validate that, but at the same time not to dwell on it. So to be able to say, wow, it is, it really is, it's so hard when you don't get to see your friends. And, I understand that you're feeling sad. I feel sad too that I can't see the people that I usually could see. And then, we want to turn as much of that to positive and have the child get out there and that act of kindness, maybe reach out to an elderly person who can't come out of their home. But focusing on the positive while acknowledging the very real feelings that they have are so important. And I think that for our children who have experienced trauma, children who are just anxious, even even before this happened, that focusing on their health, their getting out and getting them to be in the sunshine, to go for some walks or some bike rides as much as you can. That's so helpful with children that are within your own sphere of influence. For children that are outside of your sphere of influence, being an informed member of the community, donating. Our agency is a Spirit, and we have students who are foster youth and children who are in foster care throughout the state. And there are they're still accepting families who are foster families in this time too. Children do still have needs in that way. And you're correct that that alcohol related and substance abuse related factors are a real concern at that time, and we need to protect our children as well. And so, as members of the community, all of those are things that we need to be aware of, and to realize that we're all neighbors in this together, and that hiding in our own homes during the quarantine is not going to be healthy for anyone. And so it's a bigger question that we've been dealing with for a considerable amount of time, of how do we reduce the stigma of mental health. May is Mental Health Month.
Yes.
We've been working every May for years now to try to get the message out there that that depression is the common cold of mental health. That 40% of all people experience some pretty significant depression at some point, and now in the difficult times we're having now, that's only going to be increased. So reaching out to those that you love and being there for them definitely is more critical now than it ever has been before.
You're absolutely correct. In every interview, I try to include normalizing the conversation of mental health. And it doesn't have to be mental illness, it can be mental health, it can be wellness and well being. And to talk about and learn the tools that it takes, or what we need to know to work just like we work on our bodies. If we can work on our brain and our mental health and have more tools and have more awareness when it comes to feeling a certain way and knowing what the signs are and knowing how to reach out. There are resources in our county. The Behavioral Health Recovery Services Prevention and Early Intervention has started a few years ago with the Assyrian community on the Assyrian Wellness Collaborative.
Yes.
We talk about the cultural aspect and the cultural competency of how to start the conversation on mental health, on our well being, and knowing what it takes for our culture to help ourselves. And then, if we do need help, how to reach out, how to decipher and navigate through the system to have timely access to the health care or to the mental health care that is needed. And it's a lot of stigma reduction. So thank you so much for talking about that, Susan. Coming from an educator like you who knows the balance between home life, education, and kids who have been traumatized. And these are things that not many people like to talk about, but they are a part of our everyday life. And thank you so much for being a champion for home education, homeschooling, for charter schools, and innovative programs. And in closing, I just would like to thank you, Susan, for all you do. I have been following your career for years now. You're an incredible asset. You're that agent of change, as we call it in our community. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And when the last parting message I would like to leave with our families is that we're not going to go back to things the way they were before. Things are our society is changing. We've discovered that there are new ways to do business. There are new ways to educate. There are new ways to care for our families. And so when we gradually, eventually come out of this period of pandemic, we want to see our families stronger, our society stronger. And so I really encourage all of our families to look at that silver lining and look at the positives. And for the Assyrian families, I've been a part of the Assyrian community now for more than half my life. And I just want to say, Shlama lochon, kakuli yalasuri, kula babi yimma, kakule min Stanislaus County. And basimta dia Carmen, basimaka kulachon.
Basim Toyet Aten Azista Susan. Thank you so much. Gadana Yuvalach Katan, Hum Zimlach Bazdan Nisyanet Itlach, Yulpana Alayak at Itlach, Oyadraba ad Basimta. Thank you. This concludes my conversation with Susan Nissan. See you on the next Modern Assyrian. This is Carmen Morad.